Hey guys, it's Kid here from MC and this is Quick Tips. Today, 6 things you can do to make sure that your brushes stay nice and sharp without spending any money. Let's do it. So basically on the Monday of the last week of lockdown, my last good brush, this boy here, just went to absolute butt. It was super upsetting because they had a bunch of quick tips and stuff that we wanted to do. Most of them were detail work though, so not really gonna cut it. It took about 2 weeks for these to arrive. It kind of got me thinking about the bad habits that I've gotten into and the good habits that I should be getting into to make these boys last a little bit longer. So let's start off with number 1, not storing them like this. It's a bad idea. So for starters, while it might be super convenient to store your boys in a little container like this, the problem is, if you don't wash them off properly and there's a little bit of paint there, it's all gonna get into the bottom of that ferrule and clog them up and open everything up like a nice little lotus flower, which is a pretty image, but really, really, really terrible for painting your minis. So instead, when we're not using them, we're gonna store them flat and we're gonna store them dry. We don't want any water because it's gonna eat away that glue and start loosening up those frickin' bristles. Number 2. So most brushes, when you get them these days, come with a little plastic duty on top to protect it while it's in transit. Don't throw these away, they're really good. You can bang them around and knock them against things and they won't fall to pieces. You can't get stuff stuck in the bristles. It protects them from dust. They'll go a long way to keeping these boys nice and sharp. Number 3, while you're painting, use cold water. Don't use warm. Don't use hot, it's not gonna work for you. All that's gonna do is loosen up all that glue that's holding the brushes in the ferrule and you're gonna start losing them and they're gonna start losing shape. It's a nightmare. I'm particularly guilty of this when I'm washing out my water pot at the end of the day. I'll use like a big fat brush like this and some hot water and just rinse it out because it'll get all those little bits and bobs away. But just use the dish brush, mate, because this boy's in pretty bad shape now. Number 4, don't overload your brush. While you're painting, you only really want to have the paint halfway up your brush. Any further than that, and while you're working, it's going to soak its way into the ferrule, get into those bristles, and open everything up. Now, to be honest, I will break this rule pretty often, especially if I'm batch painting, but if you are worried about keeping your brushes for longer, it's definitely something to keep in mind. As a side note, you've got to be really careful with this when you're using washers, because obviously we just want to get as much on the brush and get it onto the palette, so we dip it right in there. That shit will murder your brushes. It's a pretty good idea to have a separate brush just for washers. I mark mine with a little rubber band. That way, at least I'm only f***ing up one brush at a time. Number 5, pull, don't push. This goes for when you're mixing paints in your wet palette, as well as when you're painting your model. You always want to drag your brush over whatever you're painting and not push it into any cracks. I'm guilty of this all the time. I'm constantly pushing my brush into little pieces to fill it with wash or get little detail areas. But just be aware that every time you're doing that, a little bristle goes to heaven. And finally, number 6, and this is probably a pretty obvious one, wash your brushes good, man. Every time you change color, every time you dip back into the pot to get more paint. If you're batch painting, every time you switch a mini, every like 3 or 4 minutes, you just want to make sure you give your brush a good wash. And at the end of the day, make sure you do a super thorough one. Pick any little bits and bobs out, give it a couple of rinses, dry it off in a bit of toilet paper so none of that water's getting soaked into the ferrule. And my favorite, give them a little taste. This is gonna keep your brush nice and sharp and any bits of crap getting in there while it's hanging out. No, no, no. Good. And that's it. I hope some of that was helpful. I know most of it's pretty obvious, but sometimes there is a bit of distance between knowing a thing and doing a thing. So just try and keep on top of it. I'm gonna try and do one of these a week for the next wee while, so bells and subscribes and all that stuff. Until then, look after your brushes and enjoy 9th ed, eh? Or 8.5, or whatever we're calling it. All right. Get into it.